750,000 pills seized in a massive drug trafficking operation, and federal agents say the alleged ringleader is now behind bars.
3:47 a.m. Chicago, Illinois. The wind off Lake Michigan cut through the empty streets like a blade. The city that built America's railroads was silent. Streetlights flickered over frozen puddles. Delivery trucks hadn't started their routes yet. The last bar crowds had stumbled home hours ago. But in the industrial corridors near the rail yards, something was moving. Unmarked black Suburbans rolled without headlights. Armored tactical trucks positioned themselves at 12 different coordinates across the metro area. Federal agents from ICE, the FBI, and the DEA checked their weapons in the darkness. Body cameras activated. Radios crackled with encrypted traffic. This wasn't a local drug bust. This was an invasion. At that exact moment, across 21 other American cities, the same scene was unfolding. Los Angeles, Houston, New York, Atlanta, Phoenix. Thousands of federal agents were executing the largest coordinated strike against organized crime in United States history. The operation had a name, Iron Fortress. The target was singular and terrifying: the Sinaloa and Jalisco New Generation Cartels. Two Mexican superorganizations that had turned American soil into their private distribution empire. For years, they operated with near-total impunity, moving industrial quantities of fentanyl, methamphetamine, and heroin through a network so sophisticated it rivaled Fortune 500 logistics operations. But on this frozen March morning, the rules of engagement had fundamentally changed. The order from the White House was direct and unambiguous. Dismantle the infrastructure. Seize the assets. Arrest everyone connected. If you support the brave men and women in federal law enforcement who risk everything to protect our communities from foreign drug cartels, hit the like button right now so this story reaches more people who need to see it. The Chicago operation was the nerve center of the entire offensive. Intelligence gathered over 18 months had revealed something that shocked even veteran DEA supervisors. Chicago wasn't just a distribution hub. It was the corporate headquarters of the cartel's American operations. The cartels had built an empire hiding in plain sight. They owned warehouses registered under shell companies with names like Midwest Freight Solutions and Great Lakes Logistics Group. They employed accountants, logistics coordinators, and armed security forces. They had payroll systems. They had HR departments. They had insurance policies. They had built a parallel infrastructure inside America itself. And they had help. The intelligence files contained names that made investigators sick: Border Patrol agents, county sheriffs, federal prosecutors, banking compliance officers. People who had taken oaths to defend the Constitution had sold their loyalty for cash payments that sometimes reached 6 figures annually. The betrayal was systemic. As the tactical teams reached their primary target, a massive warehouse complex in Chicago's South Side industrial zone, the breach commander gave the final order over the radio: all units, execute, execute, execute. The first battering ram struck the reinforced steel door at 3:52 a.m. The sound echoed across the empty rail yard like a cannon shot. Hinges tore from concrete. The door collapsed inward. Flashbang grenades detonated with blinding white light and deafening concussive force. Federal agents poured through the opening. FBI, get on the ground. Hands where we can see them. Inside, the scene was surreal. The warehouse looked like a legitimate trucking operation. Forklifts, pallet jacks, shipping containers stacked in neat rows, clipboards hanging on walls. A break room with a coffee maker still warm. But the agents knew what they were looking for. Behind a false wall disguised as an electrical panel, they found the first cache: 72 kilograms of pure fentanyl, pressed into counterfeit pharmaceutical pills, packaged in vacuum-sealed bags, labeled with destination codes: NYC 07, BGS 12, MIA 23. The pills were perfect replicas of legitimate prescription medications: blue oxycodone tablets, white Xanax bars, yellow Percocets. Except these weren't medicine. They were execution devices. Each pill contained between 2 and 5 milligrams of fentanyl. Just 2 milligrams can stop a human heart in under 90 seconds. The medical examiner's office had been seeing overdose victims with foam still in their mouths and needles still in their arms. This wasn't addiction. This was chemical warfare. The agents pushed deeper into the warehouse complex. In a secondary building, behind a loading dock that appeared unused, they found the counting room. Stacks of cash covered 3 industrial tables. Vacuum sealers hummed on a workbench. Currency counters sat next to plastic bins filled with rubber-banded bundles of $20, $50, and $100 bills. The DEA's Financial Crimes Unit would later calculate the total: $14.7 million in cash, just sitting in a Chicago warehouse. But that was just location 1. Across the city, 11 other simultaneous raids were uncovering the true scale of the operation. At a trucking depot near O'Hare Airport, agents discovered 340 kilograms of crystal methamphetamine hidden inside hollowed-out truck axles. At a storage facility in suburban Cicero, they found weapons: AR-15 rifles with filed-off serial numbers, Glock pistols with extended magazines, 50-caliber sniper rifles still in their cases. These weren't street dealer guns. These were military-grade weapons being shipped south to arm the cartel's private armies. The same armies that controlled entire regions of Mexico through terror and violence. The cartels weren't just importing drugs into America. They were exporting the means to defend their empire. By 6 a.m., as the sun began to rise over Lake Michigan, the scale of the seizures was becoming clear. The Chicago operation alone had netted 418 kilograms of fentanyl, 340 kilograms of methamphetamine, $14.7 million in cash, 83 firearms, and 12 vehicles registered to shell companies. But the arrests were even more significant. 67 suspects were taken into custody in Chicago. Warehouse workers, truck drivers, armed guards, logistics managers who coordinated shipments using encrypted messaging apps. And then there were the others. 3 Cook County Sheriff's deputies, a customs inspector from O'Hare, a federal probation officer, 2 Chicago Police Department officers assigned to narcotics units. They were arrested in their homes before dawn. Their badges meant nothing now. If this level of corruption shocks you, comment expose below. The deeper we go, the worse it gets. The betrayal wasn't isolated to Chicago. Across the country, the arrests painted a disturbing picture of institutional rot. In El Paso, Texas, federal agents arrested Border Patrol agent Marco Salinas at 4:15 a.m. as he reported for his shift. Salinas had been working the international bridge crossing for 9 years. He had commendations. He had a spotless record. He had also been waving through cartel trucks for $15,000 per load. Surveillance footage recovered from his personal phone showed him receiving hand signals from drivers. A scratch of the nose, a tug on the ear, simple gestures that told him which vehicles to wave through without secondary inspection. In Phoenix, Arizona, a Maricopa County prosecutor named Jennifer Ortiz was taken into custody outside the courthouse where she had been trying drug cases for 6 years. Investigators had discovered that she was providing case information to cartel attorneys. Witness names, confidential informant identities, surveillance schedules. People had died because of the information she sold. In Los Angeles, a senior IC deportation officer was arrested after investigators discovered he had been removing names from deportation lists. Cartel members who should have been detained and removed from the country simply vanished from the system. The payment for his services, $8,000 per name. The corruption was methodical and widespread. But what stunned investigators most wasn't the betrayal itself. It was how organized it had become. The cartels weren't bribing officials opportunistically. They were recruiting them systematically. Internal cartel documents seized during the raids revealed a sophisticated human resources operation. They targeted officials with financial problems, gambling debts, mortgage troubles, child support obligations. They would approach with a small favor, an envelope with $2,000, a paid-off credit card, a consulting fee for looking the other way. Then the favors got bigger. And once the official took the first payment, they were compromised forever. The cartels had them. One phone call to internal affairs would destroy their career, their pension, their freedom. So they kept taking the money. And the poison kept flowing. By noon on that first day of Operation Iron Fortress, the numbers were staggering. Across 22 cities, federal agents had executed 847 search warrants. They had seized 8,818 pounds of fentanyl. That's not a typo. 8,818 pounds. To put that into perspective, a lethal dose of fentanyl is 2 milligrams. There are roughly 453,592 milligrams in 1 pound. The amount seized could theoretically produce over 1 billion lethal doses. Enough to kill every person in the United States 3 times over. The methamphetamine seizures were equally massive. 12,400 pounds of crystal meth with an estimated street value of $340 million. The cash seizures totaled $127 million. Vacuum sealed, hidden in walls, buried in storage units, stuffed in safe deposit boxes rented under false names. But perhaps most disturbing were the cryptocurrency wallets. Agents recovered hardware wallets containing digital assets worth an estimated $73 million. The cartels had modernized their money laundering operations. They were using Bitcoin, Ethereum, and privacy coins like Monero to move money across borders without traditional banking oversight. They were criminals. but they were sophisticated criminals. If you want to see exactly how they laundered this money, hit like now and type money below so we can cover that in the next investigation. The human toll of this operation became clear as investigators dug deeper. The fentanyl seized in Chicago alone was traced back to 17 overdose deaths in the previous 3 months. A college student in Boston, a construction worker in Philadelphia, a mother of 2 in Nashville. They had bought what they thought were legitimate prescription pills from dealers who got them from distributors who got them from the warehouse in Chicago. They were dead within hours. Their families would never know that the pills that killed them had been manufactured in a superlab in Sinaloa, transported through a network of corrupt officials, and distributed by an organization that operated like a multinational corporation. The cartels didn't see them as human beings. They saw them as revenue. Each overdose death was just a statistical loss. Acceptable shrinkage in a business model built on volume and velocity. But the investigation also revealed something that gave agents hope. Not everyone had been corrupted. The task force that planned Operation Iron Fortress had worked in complete secrecy for 18 months. They couldn't trust local police departments. They couldn't trust border patrol stations. They couldn't even fully trust their own agencies. So they worked in the shadows. A team of 47 investigators from multiple agencies operated out of a secure facility in Quantico, Virginia. They used sealed indictments. They communicated through encrypted military channels. They built their cases without leaving digital fingerprints. When they finally briefed senior leadership at the Department of Justice, the Attorney General personally authorized the operation. The message was clear: the corruption would be purged. The cartels would be destroyed. America would not tolerate this occupation. The day after the raids, the Department of Justice held a press conference. The Attorney General stood behind a podium flanked by the directors of the FBI, DEA, and ICE. Behind them were tables covered with evidence. Bricks of drugs, stacks of cash, assault rifles. The Attorney General's statement was brief and direct. Yesterday, federal law enforcement executed the largest coordinated action against drug trafficking organizations in American history. We have arrested over 500 individuals. We have seized enough fentanyl to kill every American multiple times over. We have dismantled a criminal network that operated with impunity on our soil. But this operation also exposed a cancer within our own institutions. Federal, state, and local officials who betrayed their oath and facilitated the poisoning of American communities. To those officials, you will face the full weight of justice. You are not law enforcement. You are accomplices to mass murder. The room erupted with questions from reporters. But the Attorney General simply walked away from the podium. The message didn't require elaboration. In the federal detention centers across the country, the arrested suspects were being processed. Most were cartel operatives, logistics coordinators, warehouse managers, drivers, foot soldiers. They would face conspiracy charges, drug trafficking charges, money laundering charges. They were looking at decades in federal prison. But the corrupted officials faced something worse. Under federal law, a law enforcement officer who uses their position to facilitate drug trafficking can be charged under RICO statutes, the same laws used against organized crime. The penalties can exceed those for the traffickers themselves. Several of the arrested officials were already cooperating. Border Patrol agent Salinas from El Paso had provided a detailed statement within 6 hours of his arrest. He described the recruitment process, how a man approached him at a gas station near the bridge, how the man knew his name, his schedule, his financial problems, how the first payment was just $1,000, presented as a thank you for being understanding, how it escalated from there. Within 3 months, Salinas was being paid $15,000 per truck he waved through without inspection. He did it 47 times over 2 years. That's $705,000 in cartel bribes. He had purchased a new Ford F-350, a boat, a timeshare in Cabo San Lucas. His wife thought he had been doing security consulting on the side. Now he was facing 40 years in federal prison. The IC officer in Los Angeles provided similar testimony. She described how the cartel used a combination of money and intimidation. After she took the first payment, they showed her photographs of her daughter's elementary school. The message was clear: keep working for us, or your family pays. She removed 183 names from deportation lists over 14 months. Some of those individuals were arrested in the Iron Fortress raids. Others had already been deported back to Mexico, where they resumed cartel operations. The damage was incalculable. But the most shocking confession came from the federal prosecutor in Phoenix. Jennifer Ortiz sat in an interview room at the FBI field office and described a network of corruption that went beyond individual bribes. She talked about judges who dismissed cases on technicalities, defense attorneys who were on cartel payrolls, bail bondsmen who worked as cartel financiers. She described a shadow system operating inside the legitimate justice system. When investigators asked her why she did it, her answer was chilling. Because I didn't think anyone would ever find out. Comment justice below if you believe corrupted officials should face maximum penalties for betraying their oath. The cartel infrastructure uncovered during Iron Fortress revealed an operation far more sophisticated than anyone had imagined. The warehouses in Chicago weren't standalone facilities. They were nodes in a continental logistics network. Investigators mapping the supply chain discovered that fentanyl precursor chemicals were being manufactured in China and India. These chemicals, perfectly legal in their raw form, were shipped to ports in Mexico under the guise of legitimate pharmaceutical or industrial use. Once in Mexico, the precursors were transported to superlabs in Sinaloa and Jalisco states. These labs were massive operations. Industrial-scale mixing equipment. Pill presses capable of producing 50,000 tablets per hour. Chemists with advanced degrees. The pills were then packaged and transported north. The routes varied. Some came through official ports of entry, hidden in trucks carrying legitimate goods. Others came through tunnels. Some were smuggled by individual couriers who swallowed packets or hid them in body cavities. But the bulk of the product came through the system. Corrupt border inspectors. Purchased truck weigh station operators. Bribed highway patrol officers who ignored suspicious vehicles. Once in the United States, the drugs were routed to distribution hubs. Chicago was the biggest, but there were others. Houston, Atlanta, Phoenix. From these hubs, the drugs were broken down into smaller quantities and distributed through regional networks. Street dealers bought from mid-level suppliers who bought from regional coordinators who got their product from the Chicago warehouse. It was a corporate supply chain. Efficient, redundant, profitable. The financial investigations revealed that the cartels were generating an estimated $13 billion annually from U.S. drug sales. That money had to be moved back to Mexico and converted into usable assets. This is where the money laundering became truly innovative. The cartels were using a technique called trade-based money laundering. They would purchase legitimate goods in the United States using drug proceeds. Electronics, cars, clothing. These goods would be exported to Mexico and sold, converting dirty money into clean revenue. They also used cryptocurrency extensively. Drug proceeds would be converted to Bitcoin through peer-to-peer exchanges and Bitcoin ATMs. The cryptocurrency would be transferred to wallets in Mexico, then converted back to pesos or dollars through exchanges in countries with weak financial oversight. Some of the money was laundered through real estate. Cartel-linked buyers were purchasing properties in Miami, Los Angeles, Phoenix, and Texas. These properties were often purchased through shell companies registered in states with lax disclosure requirements. A condo in Miami purchased for $1.2 million with drug money would be rented out, producing legitimate rental income. After a few years, it would be sold, and the proceeds would be clean. The entire economy was being infiltrated. Federal investigators estimated that cartel money had purchased over $4 billion in U.S. real estate in the past decade. That's not just a crime problem. That's a national security threat. If this level of infiltration concerns you, share this video so more people understand what's happening. But Operation Iron Fortress didn't just focus on arrests and seizures. It focused on dismantling the infrastructure. Federal prosecutors filed civil forfeiture actions against 247 properties linked to cartel operations. Warehouses, homes, office buildings, storage facilities. These properties were seized under federal law, which allows the government to take assets connected to criminal activity. The cartels couldn't just replace the infrastructure overnight. Every warehouse seized was a logistics hub destroyed. Every vehicle taken was a distribution route disrupted. Every bank account frozen was a financial pipeline severed. The goal wasn't just to arrest people. It was to make the operation financially unsustainable. And it was working. Intelligence reports in the weeks following Iron Fortress indicated chaos within the cartel networks. Loads were being delayed. Payments weren't being made. Mid-level managers were disappearing, either arrested or fleeing. The cartels were on their heels. But investigators knew this was just the opening battle in a long war. The Sinaloa and CJNG cartels had operated for decades. They had survived military operations in Mexico. They had survived leadership arrests. They had survived internal wars. They would adapt. The question was whether the United States could maintain the pressure. 3 weeks after the raids, federal prosecutors began filing indictments. The cases were assigned to multiple jurisdictions to prevent any single court from being overwhelmed. Chicago, Los Angeles, Houston, Phoenix, New York. Each district was handling dozens of defendants. The charges were extensive: conspiracy to distribute controlled substances, money laundering, using a firearm in furtherance of drug trafficking, corruption of public officials, RICO charges for those connected to the organizational structure. Many defendants were facing life sentences. But the corrupted officials faced additional charges: honest services fraud, bribery of a public official, obstruction of justice, deprivation of rights under color of law. These charges carried their own substantial sentences, often stacked on top of the drug trafficking charges. Border Patrol agent Salinas was facing a mandatory minimum of 73 years. The message was clear: betray your oath, and you will spend the rest of your life in prison. The trials would take years, but federal prosecutors were confident. They had the evidence. They had cooperating witnesses. They had financial records, surveillance footage, intercepted communications. The convictions were inevitable. As the legal process moved forward, something unexpected began happening in the communities most affected by cartel violence and addiction. People started talking. Anonymous tips flooded into FBI field offices. People reported suspicious activity at warehouses. They identified individuals they believed were connected to cartel operations. The fear that had kept communities silent was breaking. For years, residents in neighborhoods controlled by cartel distribution networks had lived in terror. They saw the dealers on the corners. They knew which houses were stash locations. They watched the violence. But they said nothing, because speaking out meant retaliation. It meant your house getting shot up. It meant your family being threatened. But Iron Fortress changed the calculation. The arrests proved that the cartels weren't untouchable. The corruption prosecutions proved that the system could be trusted, at least enough to take the risk. Community organizations in Chicago, Los Angeles, and Phoenix began working directly with federal task forces. They organized neighborhood watch programs. They provided information about abandoned properties being used as stash houses. They took their streets back. It wasn't a complete victory. The cartels still operated. Dealers still sold drugs. Addicts still overdosed. But the infrastructure was damaged. And for the first time in years, the communities felt like they had a fighting chance. If you believe communities deserve protection from cartel violence, comment protect below. 6 months after Operation Iron Fortress, the Department of Justice released a detailed report on the operation's impact. The numbers were significant: 5,247 arrests across 22 cities, 8,818 pounds of fentanyl seized, 12,400 pounds of methamphetamine seized, $127 million in cash, $73 million in cryptocurrency, 847 firearms. But beyond the numbers, the report detailed something more important: the disruption. Cartel communications intercepted after the raids showed panic. Leaders were ordering their operatives to abandon certain routes. They were pulling back from cities where the heat was too intense. Drug prices in some markets increased by 40% due to supply disruptions. That wasn't just an economic indicator. That was evidence of success. When supply is disrupted, prices rise. When prices rise, access decreases. When access decreases, fewer people die. It wasn't a permanent solution, but it was progress. The report also detailed the ongoing corruption investigations. In total, 83 law enforcement and government officials were arrested in connection with Iron Fortress. That included federal agents, state police, local sheriffs, customs officials, and court employees. Each arrest sent shockwaves through their respective agencies. Internal affairs divisions were conducting full audits of their personnel. Background checks were being redone. Financial disclosures were being scrutinized. Trust inside institutions had been weakened. But the purge was necessary. You can't fight corruption by ignoring it. You fight it by rooting it out, no matter how painful the process. The Pentagon also took unprecedented action following Iron Fortress. The Department of Defense designated the Sinaloa and CJNG cartels as foreign terrorist organizations under a special executive order. This wasn't symbolic. It meant that military assets could now be used against cartel operations. It meant that intelligence agencies could target cartel communications with the same tools used against ISIS and Al-Qaeda. It meant the full weight of American military and intelligence power was now aimed at the cartels. Within weeks, U.S. Cyber Command launched operations targeting cartel communications infrastructure. Encrypted messaging servers were compromised. Financial tracking systems were penetrated. The cartels were used to fighting corrupt cops and rival gangs. They weren't prepared to fight the National Security Agency. Satellite imagery from military reconnaissance showed cartel superlabs being abandoned in Sinaloa. The heat was too intense. The risk was too high. Some labs moved deeper into remote areas. Others simply shut down. But the disruption was real. The Mexican government, under intense pressure from Washington, also increased its operations against the cartels. Joint task forces with U.S. military advisors conducted raids on cartel strongholds. High-value targets were arrested and extradited to the United States to face charges. This wasn't cooperation out of goodwill. This was cooperation under threat. The Trump administration had made it clear, help us destroy the cartels or face economic consequences. Mexico needed American trade more than it needed to protect cartel leaders. So the arrests accelerated. Within 8 months of Iron Fortress, 14 high-ranking cartel members were extradited to the United States. These weren't street-level operators. These were regional commanders, financial officers, logistics chiefs. They would face trial in U.S. courts where cartel intimidation didn't reach juries. The convictions were nearly guaranteed. Hit like if you support holding cartel leaders accountable in U.S. courts. But the operation also exposed uncomfortable truths about American complicity in the crisis. The demand for drugs was coming from American communities. The guns flowing south to arm cartel enforcers were American firearms. The money laundering was happening through American banks. This wasn't just a Mexican problem. This was an American problem with Mexican logistics. Addiction treatment advocates argued that Iron Fortress, while necessary, didn't address the root cause. As long as millions of Americans struggled with addiction, there would be demand. And where there was demand, someone would supply. They weren't wrong. Federal prosecutors acknowledged that law enforcement alone couldn't solve the crisis. There needed to be a comprehensive approach. Treatment, prevention, education. But they also argued that you can't treat people who are already dead. The fentanyl flooding American communities was killing users before they had a chance to seek help. A first-time user who bought a counterfeit pill could be dead before they realized they needed treatment. So the enforcement had to come first. Stop the flow, save lives, then address the addiction. It was a brutal calculus, but it was the reality. The pharmaceutical industry also faced scrutiny in the aftermath of Iron Fortress. The reason cartel fentanyl was so deadly was because users thought they were buying legitimate pharmaceutical-grade opioids. The counterfeit pills looked identical to real prescriptions. That confusion was killing people. Federal regulators began requiring pharmaceutical manufacturers to add new security features to prescription pills. Special markings, coatings that couldn't be replicated easily. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it might save some lives. The financial institutions also came under pressure. Banks that had processed transactions later linked to cartel money laundering faced massive fines. Wells Fargo, Bank of America, and several regional banks paid over $800 million in combined penalties for failing to report suspicious transactions. The banks claimed they had compliance systems in place, but the systems had failed. Federal regulators made it clear, if you're facilitating cartel money laundering, even unknowingly, you'll pay. 1 year after Operation Iron Fortress, the results were mixed but measurable. Overdose deaths from fentanyl had declined by 23% in the cities where the raids were concentrated. That was thousands of lives saved. Cartel violence in Mexico had actually increased as the organizations fought internally over disrupted territories and lost revenue. The power vacuum created by the arrests led to brutal internal wars. But that violence was contained in Mexico. American communities saw reductions in cartel-related homicides. It was a cold trade-off, but it was a trade-off American policymakers were willing to make. The financial impact on the cartels was estimated at over $3 billion in lost revenue and seized assets in the first year alone. For organizations built on profit, that was existential. Subscribe so you don't miss the updates on what happens next in this war. The legacy of Operation Iron Fortress won't be fully understood for years. But what is clear is that it represented a fundamental shift in how the United States approached the cartel threat. For decades, the war on drugs focused on street-level enforcement, arresting dealers, seizing small quantities, going after users. It didn't work. Iron Fortress targeted the infrastructure, the logistics, the corruption, the money. It treated the cartels not as criminal gangs, but as terrorist organizations and enemy combatants. And it worked, at least partially. The fight is far from over. The cartels still operate, drugs still flow, people still die. But the message was sent: America will fight back.